Why do some people stay calm in chaos, while others collapse under pressure? Why does one person walk away from rejection, while another spirals just from being ignored? Why does one message, one glance, one silence pull you out of peace? You were fine. And suddenly, you weren't. What changed? Not the world, not the people, just one thing. Your reaction. When your emotions rule you, you're not free. You're fragile. But there's another way. A mindset that doesn't need the world to be kind or predictable or fair, because it's not about controlling them. It's about mastering you. Today, you'll learn how to become untouchable, not by avoiding pain, but by rewiring your response to it. This isn't motivation. It's a mental operating system, forged in fire, and it starts now. Let's be clear. Stoicism is not about being passive. It's not about pretending you don't care or repressing how you feel. It's not philosophy for people who escape the storm. It's for those who stand in it, still, unmoved, unbothered. Think of it as emotional armor, built for chaos. It's not soft. It's not sentimental. It's strategic. Let me introduce you to the men who lived it. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor with absolute power, who chose inner discipline over ego. Epictetus, a man born in chains, who trained minds freer than any king. Seneca, a political force, who studied death while shaping empires. What do they have in common? They didn't seek comfort. They sought clarity. They didn't chase control. They trained their response to what couldn't be controlled, and so will you. In this video, you'll learn 10 Stoic principles that will upgrade the way you think, feel, and react. They're not hacks. They're foundations. The more chaotic the world gets, the calmer you become. Let's begin. Have you ever had one of those days where you did everything right? You got up. You worked. You handled your responsibilities. You were productive. But somehow, at the end of the day, you still felt like you hadn't moved forward, like something important was missing. But you couldn't quite name what. That feeling is the absence of direction. You see, life isn't just about momentum. It's about alignment. And without a clear purpose, momentum means nothing. It's just energy wasted in the wrong direction. That's why people burn out. That's why people numb themselves with distractions. That's why people chase goal after goal but never feel complete. It's not that they're weak. It's not that they're lazy. It's that they've never defined where they're going. They've never asked the question, what am I really here to do? The Stoics saw this as one of the greatest dangers of human life, to live reactively, to go through life like a leaf in the wind, pushed by whatever is loudest, latest, or most demanding. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world at the time, wrote this in his private journal. If you don't have a consistent goal in life, you can't live it consistently. That wasn't just philosophy. That was survival. Because without purpose, even power becomes meaningless. And here's the truth. You don't have to be emperor to feel the effects of drift. You just have to live without clarity long enough. And the symptoms will show up. They sound like this: I'm busy, but I don't know what I'm building. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to, but I don't feel fulfilled. I keep achieving things, but none of it feels like enough. If any of that hits you, you're not broken. You're just untouchable. And that's where this Stoic principle comes in. The antidote to chaos is not control. It's clarity, a personal North Star, one that's defined by you, not by the world. Because when you have that clarity, you become dangerous. You stop chasing every shiny thing. You stop seeking validation in every conversation. You stop folding under pressure because you know exactly what you're here to do. Now let's bring this down to earth. Here's a simple practice to help you lock into purpose. I call it the purpose compass. Every morning, before you pick up your phone, before your mind gets hijacked by other people's agendas, sit still, breathe, and ask, who do I want to be today? What values will guide my behavior? What's one thing I can do today that moves me closer to becoming that person? Then, write one sentence. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It just has to be honest. That's your compass. It might say, today, I show up with discipline and kindness. Today, I will not react. I will respond. Today, I create. I focus. I stay aligned. You can write a new one each morning, or repeat the same sentence for a week. It doesn't matter. What matters is this: you are no longer drifting. You are choosing who you are and how you'll move through the day. Steve Jobs had a question he used to ask himself every morning. If today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I'm about to do today? If the answer was no for too many days in a row, he didn't ignore that. He changed something. That's not romantic. That's precision. That's what a man with a North Star looks like. You don't need to be a billionaire to live like that. You just need to care enough about your path to define it. Because the moment you do, everything changes. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And you start asking, how does this challenge make me sharper? Setbacks stop feeling like the end of the story and start feeling like part of your training. Purpose turns pain into fuel. It turns rejection into redirection. It turns stress into strategy. You no longer need things to go your way because you know where you're going regardless of the terrain. So if you've been drifting, you know what to do now. Pause. Breathe. Write. Start with one sentence. Build from there. Because clarity isn't something you find, it's something you build every day. And the deeper that clarity gets, the stronger you become. You can't control what happens, but you can always control how you respond. That's where real power begins. Let's be honest. Emotions can feel like ambushes. You're doing fine, and suddenly, someone says something, does something, or doesn't say anything at all, and now your entire day is off track. Sound familiar? It starts small. A comment, a look, a silence, and suddenly, you're spiraling. Angry, anxious, unsettled. But here's the truth. The Stoics knew better than anyone. You don't have to react to everything you feel. Just because a storm rises inside you doesn't mean you have to become the storm. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That quote is more than advice. It's a weapon. Because if you can control your reaction, you control your outcome, your relationships, your peace, your future. Now, here's where most people get stuck. They think emotional control means emotional suppression. It doesn't. Suppressing what you feel only makes it more volatile, more reactive, more dangerous. Real emotional control is different. It doesn't say, "Don't feel." It says, "Feel it, but don't be ruled by it." You're still allowed to feel anger, to feel sadness, to feel fear. But those feelings are information. They are not instructions. And that's the difference between those who fall apart and those who stand unshaken. Let me show you the 3 levels of response. Level 1 is reflex. You feel something, and you react immediately. You snap. You lash out. You shut down. This is what most people do. It's automatic. It's unconscious. And it's usually regrettable. Level 2 is control. You feel something, and you pause. You breathe. You let the emotion rise, then choose how to respond. This is what Stoicism trains you to do. But there's a 3rd level, and this is where things become powerful. Level 3 is transmutation. You take the energy of the emotion and you use it. You channel anger into strategy. You turn frustration into clarity. You convert pain into purpose. That's not repression. That's mastery. And one of the simplest ways to practice that is something I call the emotional distance lens. Here's how it works. When you feel an emotion start to take over, you don't resist it. You don't act on it. You observe it. As if it's happening to someone else. You become the witness. Ask yourself, what is this emotion really trying to tell me? Is it based on truth? Or just interpretation? If I were coaching someone else through this moment, what would I say? This lens gives you space, and space gives you freedom. Most of the damage we do to ourselves, to others, to our future, it happens in moments where there's no space, no pause, no breath. So train yourself to create that pause. You don't need to respond in 5 seconds. You don't even need to respond today. You just need to stay grounded. Long enough to stay in power. Think about this. Has reacting ever made a situation better? Has lashing out ever made you feel stronger? Or did it always lead to more damage? The Stoics knew the answer. So they practiced restraint not as weakness, but as wisdom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. When your mind is calm, you're impossible to manipulate. When your emotions are centered, no one can control you through provocation. When your response is intentional, your outcome is no longer random. This is what emotional control gives you: clarity, leadership, self-respect, peace. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. And the more you practice it, the stronger it becomes. So the next time a wave of emotion rises, anger, fear, insecurity, pause, breathe. And remember, you don't need to react. You only need to respond. And when you do, you don't just survive the moment, you win it. Your mind can be your greatest ally or your most dangerous enemy. The difference is how you train it. The greatest battles you'll ever fight won't be out there. Not in the office, not in your relationships, not even on the battlefield. They'll happen right between your ears, because the mind is a beast. Untrained, it will pull you toward fear, doubt, distraction, and self-sabotage. But trained, it becomes the most powerful force in your life. The Stoics understood this long before science caught up. They didn't just write about virtue and logic. They trained their thoughts. Like soldiers, Marcus Aurelius didn't just rule Rome. He ruled himself. He wrote in Meditations, not to sound wise, but to condition his own mind every single morning, because he knew if he didn't master his thoughts would master him. And the same is true for you. You think you're making decisions, but most of the time, your mind is just reacting to impulses, to habits, to invisible scripts you never wrote. The modern world rewards that kind of drift. It feeds you distractions, stimuli, noise. So unless you train your mind daily, intentionally, and ruthlessly, you will be ruled by it. Now let's make this real. Think about Navy SEALs, some of the most mentally disciplined humans on the planet. Their core principle: when you think you're done, you're only at 40% of your actual capacity. That's the 40% rule, popularized by David Goggins, a man who turned pain into purpose by learning to outlast the stories in his head. Most people give up when they're tired, when they're uncomfortable, when they feel resistance. But Stoics, they don't listen to emotion as the final word. They interrogate it, challenge it, transcend it, because thoughts aren't facts. They're suggestions. And I don't have to believe all of them. That's why you need a Stoic mind reset routine. Not once, not twice, but 3 times a day. Here's how it works. Morning. Set the frame. Before the noise begins, you write down 2 things. Who do I want to be today? What distractions will try to pull me off course? You visualize the day like a battlefield. You see the obstacles before they arrive, and you prepare your response before it's needed. Midday recalibrate. Somewhere around lunchtime, pause. Step back. Scan your mental state. Am I being reactive or intentional? Am I leading or just surviving? What has hijacked my energy so far? Take 2 minutes to breathe. Refocus. Return to center. This is your inner mental checkpoint. Evening, reflect and reinforce. At night, you download the day. Like Marcus Aurelius did. What did I do well? Where did I drift? What will I refine tomorrow? Not judgment, just clarity. Discipline isn't about perfection. It's about awareness plus adjustment over and over again. You don't train the mind once. You condition it forever. Because even the strongest mind decays without discipline. Even the calmest person cracks without maintenance. Even the wisest thoughts rot in neglect. But when you practice this, you move differently. You walk into chaos. With stillness, you get provoked. And don't flinch. You feel fear. But move anyway. Because the thoughts come. But you're not ruled by them. You observe them. Question them. Redirect them. And that is freedom. So let me ask you, who's running your mind right now? You or the noise? You or the cravings? The scrolling? The old programming? You don't fix it all in one day, but you can start today with one breath, one check-in, one reset. Because the Stoic path doesn't begin with peace. It begins with practice. And every time you choose to lead your mind instead of follow it, you become something very rare in this world, a person who cannot be manipulated, even by their own thoughts. If you don't bleed for their praise, don't bleed for their criticism. The Stoic path isn't about ignoring feedback. It's about separating what builds you from what breaks you. Let's face it. Criticism hits deep. Even when you try to act like it doesn't, it gets in. Someone says a sentence, and you replay it for days. You try to move on, but the words follow you. In meetings, in the car, in your sleep. That's the thing about criticism. It doesn't need volume, it just needs timing. And when it hits the right wound, it owns you. But the Stoics, they saw criticism differently. They didn't fear it, and they didn't blindly accept it either. They asked, is this useful? Is this true? And does this help me grow? If not, they let it go. Because not all criticism is feedback. Sometimes it's projection. Sometimes it's insecurity in disguise. And sometimes it's just noise. The goal isn't to block all criticism. That's ego. The goal is to filter it, like a disciplined mind filters thoughts. So here's a tool I call the criticism audit sheet. 3 levels. 1 decision point. When someone criticizes you internally or externally, ask, is this valid? Is there truth here I can use? Even if it stings, does this point to a blind spot I've ignored? If yes, Accept it. Say thank you. Grow stronger. Is this projection? Is this person speaking from their own wounds? Are they judging me? Or fighting their own internal war through me? If so, don't absorb it. Recognize the pain behind the words and let it pass through. Is this just noise? Is this coming from someone who hasn't earned a seat at your table? Is it vague, emotional, agenda-driven, or designed to tear you down? Then it's not feedback. It's a distraction. Move on. Because the Stoic doesn't get stronger by listening to everything. He gets stronger by listening to what matters and ignoring the rest. Think of it this way. If you don't crave their praise, don't collapse under their criticism. You can't let strangers define your worth. You can't let unqualified opinions shape your direction. And you definitely can't let every voice become your inner voice. That's not growth. That's emotional chaos. Now here's the hard part. Sometimes, valid criticism still hurts. Even when it's true. Even when it's useful. And that's okay. Because growth often stings first. Before it strengthens you, you can say, yes, that hurt me. But it taught me. That's Stoic maturity. You're not pretending it didn't land. You're just choosing what you do with it. That choice is the difference between those who evolve and those who get stuck defending their ego for a lifetime. Seneca said, "If one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable. Criticism is like the wind. If you know where you're going, it can help. If you don't, it will toss you." That's why inner direction matters so much. If you've done part 1, your North Star, you already know who you are. And you already know who you're becoming. So now, you're ready to evaluate criticism without absorbing it. You can hold it in your hand, but not in your heart. You can analyze it without letting it redefine you. So here's your practice. The next time someone criticizes you, pause. Don't react. Don't explain. Just breathe. Then run it through the criticism audit: valid, projection, or noise, and respond accordingly. Because leadership doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being clear. Clear about who you are, and clear about who you're not. When you know that, the world can speak loudly, but it can't shake you. You'll stay humble enough to learn, but detached enough not to bleed. And that balance, that's where quiet power lives. Can't control what they say, but you can control whether it wounds you, and that is the essence of strength. Let's be honest. We live in a world addicted to outrage. Everything is offensive. Everyone's offended. And silence. Sometimes that offends them too. People throw words like darts, waiting for a reaction. And the moment you flinch, they know they've got you. That's how control works today. Not through chains, but through your emotions. And this is where the Stoics become dangerous, because they understood something most people never learn. Being offended is a decision. It's not automatic. It's not inevitable. It's a choice, a reflex you can retrain. Epictetus said, "When someone provokes you, realize that it is your own opinion that provokes you." In other words, the words don't hurt you. Your meaning attached to them does. Think about that. If someone calls you a liar and you know you've told the truth, you don't feel offended. You feel clarity. But if part of you believes their accusation, even just a little, that's where it stings. So here's the shift. Offense doesn't come from them. It comes from what's still unresolved inside you. And this is powerful, because it means you can build immunity. You can train your mind to say, "That's not mine to carry. That's just noise. I don't need to react to prove who I am." This is what I call high-status indifference. It's not arrogance. It's not pretending you don't care. It's simply the ability to stay grounded. When people try to pull you down, it's understanding that not every insult deserves your energy. Not every jab needs a jab back. And not every fire is worth feeding. Imagine this. A CEO runs a billion-dollar company. He's calm, focused, leading a team, delivering results. Now someone online says, "This guy's a fraud. This guy's washed. This guy's clueless." What does the CEO do? He doesn't respond. He doesn't defend. He doesn't explain. Why? Because he's playing at a level where not responding is the power move. He doesn't live for the approval of the crowd. He's moved beyond the need to be understood by everyone. That's high-status indifference. And guess what? You don't need to be a CEO to carry that energy. You just need to stop handing people your emotional buttons. Every time someone offends you, they've located a button you haven't secured. So the next time it happens, don't explode. Don't suppress. Just observe. Ask yourself, what part of me reacted? Is this worth my energy? What would my highest self do right now? And often, the answer is simple. Nothing. Not because you're passive, but because you've already won by not reacting. Because when you choose not to be offended, you become unpredictable. You become unreadable. You become powerful. Offense is the easiest way to control someone. Poke their wound, watch them dance. But when you stop reacting, you stop dancing for anyone. You own your time, your tone, your attention, and suddenly, you're in charge again. So here's your practice for the next 7 days. Every time something offends you, pause it, label it, and choose silence. Not out of fear, but out of strength. Because a person who doesn't need to explain, a person who doesn't flinch when provoked, a person who chooses dignity over drama, that person is rare. That person is untouchable. And that is the person you're becoming. Is about the future that hasn't happened. Shame is about the past that can't be changed. Both lose their power the moment you confront them in the mirror. Fear, shame, two shadows that follow most people for life. Fear says, "You're not ready. You'll fail. They'll laugh." So you hesitate. You delay. You shrink. Shame whispers, "You messed up. You're not worthy. You should hide." So you disconnect. You overcompensate. Or worse, you stay stuck. Fear lives in the future. Shame lives in the past. But both steal from the present. The Stoics knew this. That's why they didn't run from fear, they studied it. They didn't bury shame, they exposed it to light. Because once something is examined, it loses its grip. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And most of what haunts us isn't what actually happened. It's what we keep rehearsing in our minds. So here's the truth. You don't need to be fearless. You need to be clear. You don't need to erase shame. You need to redeem it. And that starts with a conversation, something I call the Stoic mirror talk. It's not about affirmations. It's not about hype. It's about truth spoken to yourself, from the place that wants freedom more than comfort. Here's how it works. You stand in front of a mirror. Yes, physically, you look yourself in the eye and you ask 3 questions. Question 1. What's the worst that can happen? Say the fear out loud. Strip it of its drama. Get specific. Is it losing a job? Being embarrassed? Getting rejected? Then walk through it, step by step. What would you actually do if it happened? You'll realize most fears are paper tigers, loud but hollow, realistic when undefined, but weak when dissected. Question 2. What's the lesson I haven't learned yet? Shame lingers when the past has no meaning. But when you extract the lesson, you transform regret into wisdom. Maybe the mistake taught you boundaries. Maybe the failure taught you focus. Maybe the embarrassment taught you humility. Don't suppress the moment. Honor the lesson. Then ask yourself, question 3, what's still in my control? Right now, this is the Stoic anchor. No matter what fear predicts, no matter what shame remembers, you still have control over your next action. And action is how you reclaim power. When you speak these 3 questions into the mirror, you stop being a victim of your mind. You become its coach. And no, this isn't easy. It's confronting. It's awkward. It's raw. But it's also real. Because avoiding fear doesn't make it go away. It just buries it deeper. Avoiding shame doesn't protect you. It just postpones your healing. But when you face them, you dissolve them. Bit by bit. Sentence by sentence. That's what the Stoics practiced every day. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. So here's your reminder. Fear is not a prophecy. It's a projection. Shame is not your identity. It's a signal. Both are trying to teach you something. So stop avoiding. Start listening. And then choose. To act. To move. To rise. Because the person who looks themselves in the eye and answers with courage is already free. So tonight, or Tomorrow morning. Stand in front of the mirror. No phone. No distractions. Just you. And the questions. What's the worst? What's the lesson? What's in my control? Speak the answers out loud. Even if your voice shakes. Even if it feels silly. Do it anyway. Because clarity isn't always comfortable, but it's always liberating. And that liberation begins with honesty. Catches most people off guard. Doesn't surprise the Stoic. Because they saw it coming, and they prepared their response in advance. Let's get one thing straight. Life doesn't always ask for your permission before it changes. You wake up thinking it's just another Tuesday. And by lunch, you're hit with a diagnosis, a betrayal, a crash, a loss, a moment that redefines everything. Most people get crushed by these moments because they didn't see them coming. And when you're unprepared, panic fills the space where presence should have been. But the Stoics, they had a weapon for this. They called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, the practice of visualizing what could go wrong before it does. Not to worry yourself, not to become cynical, but to become ready. Seneca said, "He robs present ills of their power, who has anticipated their coming." In other words, if you've rehearsed the chaos mentally, it has no power to break you emotionally. Now, let's be clear. This isn't negative thinking. This is strategic forecasting. A Stoic doesn't obsess over bad things. They simply don't pretend they're immune. They ask, what if the worst-case scenario actually happened? Then they answer that question with clarity and with courage, because imagining the fall lets you engineer the landing. Let me give you a modern example. A startup founder sees their financial runway shrinking. They know they're 2 bad quarters away from collapse. They don't avoid the thought. They don't just hope for the best. They sit down and walk through it. If the company fails, what conversations need to happen? How do we protect the team? What's our plan B, C, and D? That founder is now calm, not because things are perfect, but because their mind isn't surprised. They've already met the fall and prepared to rise again. That's premeditatio malorum in motion. And here's how you can practice it. I call it morning scenario training. It takes 5 minutes. Each morning after you've written your purpose compass, ask yourself, what are 3 things that could go wrong today? A meeting could blow up. Someone might cancel. I might get rejected. I might feel overwhelmed. An opportunity might fall through. Now for each one. Right, if that happens, here's how I'll respond. Not react. Respond. You're building a plan. You're rehearsing grace under fire. You're stripping the unknown of its terror. Because it's not chaos that breaks people, it's the shock of chaos. It's the gap between what you expected and what actually happens. So you shrink that gap, and suddenly, you're stronger than most. You move through your day, not paranoid, but prepared. not anxious, but armed. Because if it happens, you already knew. And if it doesn't, even better. The Stoic isn't surprised by betrayal, by loss, by failure. They visualized it, Saturday with it, responded to it in their mind. Before it ever touched real life. That's not morbid. That's wisdom. And there's another layer. This practice doesn't just protect you from life's chaos. It also makes you grateful, because when you imagine loss, you start appreciating presence. When you imagine rejection, you start valuing connection. When you imagine failure, you stop fearing it and start learning from it. That's why Stoics didn't just meditate on the worst. They used it to upgrade the present. So here's your challenge. For the next 7 mornings, practice scenario training. Don't avoid the question, what could go wrong today? Answer it. Then define your Stoic response. That 5-minute drill can make the difference between breakdown and breakthrough, because while others panic in the storm, you've already stood in it. Mentally, strategically, and now you move through it with quiet certainty. That's not superstition. That's strength, and it's available to you. Every morning. Power isn't about doing more. It's about wasting less. And that begins with knowing what's yours to carry and what's not. Let's talk about control. Not the illusion of it, not the performance of it, but the kind that actually matters. The kind that begins inside and radiates out in quiet, steady power. Because here's the truth. Most people feel overwhelmed. Not because they're weak, but because they're scattered. Their attention is everywhere. Their energy is leaking. Their peace is bleeding out through things they were never meant to control. The Stoics called this the fundamental discipline. Focus only on what is up to you. Let go of what is not. Epictetus put it plainly. Some things are in our control and others not. And the faster you learn to separate the two, the stronger you become. So let's make this real. Imagine you have a mental energy budget, just like money. Each morning, you get 100 units. That's all you get. No refill. No bonus points. Now look at how most people spend it. 30 units on what people think of them. 20 on what might go wrong. 15 on comparing their life to someone else's. 10 on things they can't change. 25 left for everything that actually matters. No wonder people feel anxious, tired, irritable, burned out. They're broke mentally, not because life is cruel, but because their energy is mismanaged. Stoics reverse this. They don't try to control the weather. They prepare their attitude. They don't try to control other people. They master their response. Because the person who wins the day is not the one who controls everything. It's the one who controls themselves. So here's your practice. It's simple, but it's powerful. Take a blank page. Draw 2 columns. On the left, right can't control. On the right, right can influence. Now, start listing. Under can't control, what other people say. how they feel about you, unexpected problems, the past, the outcome, can influence your attitude, your effort, your schedule, your tone, your preparation. When you're done, cross out the left column. Hard, because that's your mental clutter. That's your emotional debt. That's what's draining your power. Now circle the right column. This is your leverage. This is your arena. This is where strength is built. Because every time you bring energy to what you can't control, you lose strength. But every time you return to what you can, you gain it back. And over time, that's how calm is built. That's how resilience is forged. That's how quiet power becomes visible to everyone around you. Not from intensity, from intentionality. The Stoics weren't superhuman. They were just extremely selective about where they placed their attention. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but he still reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. That was his anchor. That was his shield. And it can be yours too. So here's a new rule. Never spend your energy on things that won't return it. You don't have to win every argument. You don't have to fix every misunderstanding. You don't have to predict every outcome. You just have to stay anchored in what's yours to do. That's real strength. Because while others are trying to manage everything, you're mastering your one thing, you. So the next time you feel drained, ask yourself, where did my energy go today? Was it spent building something or defending something? Was it invested in clarity or wasted on noise? And if the answer stings a little, good. That's where the shift begins. Because once you start choosing your focus with intention, you stop chasing control and you start living in it. Impulsive reaction can ruin a decade. A calm pose can protect your legacy. That's not weakness. That's war strategy. Let's talk about heat. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that builds inside you like fire, triggered by disrespect, by pressure, by sudden chaos. That moment when your hands are shaking, your heart's racing, and you feel that sharp need to do something. Say something. Fire back. Prove your point. Reclaim control. But here's what you need to understand. Impulse is expensive. React in the heat of the moment. And you can destroy trust. Burn bridges. Undermine your own power, all in under 60 seconds. We've all done it. A text we shouldn't have sent. A message we shouldn't have posted. A meeting where emotion hijacked our tone and changed how people saw us. Forever. Because in those moments, we forget power doesn't scream. Power doesn't panic. Power doesn't beg to be understood. Power waits. The Stoics called this sophrosine self-restraint. Not repression. Not bottling up. But the deliberate choice to hold your fire, not because you're weak, but because you know your timing is stronger than their chaos. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "How much more harmful are the consequences of anger than the causes of it?" In other words, the spark isn't the problem. It's what you do with it that defines who you are. So here's a modern strategy I call the 24-hour rule. Whenever you feel the urge to fire back, don't. Wait 24 hours. Yes. A full day. Especially if it's emotional. Especially if it's personal. Especially if it feels like it just can't wait. Because that urgency, that I have to speak now voice in your head, that's not wisdom. That's adrenaline. That's ego. That's fear, dressed up as authority. Let me give you an example. Imagine this. You get an email from your boss. It's aggressive, maybe even unfair. You feel misjudged. You feel disrespected. And immediately, your fingers want to type back, to clarify, to defend, to hit back with logic and heat, but instead, you pose, you breathe, you walk away, you let 24 hours pass, and then the next morning you write your reply, not with fury, but with clarity, not with edge, but with edge control. And here's what happens. You preserve your position. You gain respect. You keep the high ground. Because silence in the heat isn't retreat. It's recalibration. And it almost always wins in the long game. The Stoic understands this deeply. That's why they didn't just speak wisely, they timed their wisdom. Not every situation needs your voice. Not every insult deserves your attention. And not every emotional spike is a command. So ask yourself, what if your next response determined your reputation? Would you still fire back? Would you still press send? Would you still post that story? Or would you wait? Not out of fear, but out of strategy. Because the truth is, anyone can react. Few can hold still. And almost no one knows how to stay powerful in silence. That's your advantage. So here's your practice. The next time you're triggered, wait. The next time someone tries to provoke you, pause. The next time your ego says, they can't talk to me like that, remind yourself, yes, they can. But I don't have to answer right now. And that one moment of restraint can shift your entire trajectory because your words have weight. And every time you use them, you're either building power or giving it away. So, choose wisely. Speak when it serves you. And if it doesn't, let silence do the work. Don't control the universe, but you do control your posture within it. That's where calm begins and chaos ends. Life doesn't ask for your approval. It doesn't explain itself before shifting. It doesn't warn you before removing what you thought was permanent. It just happens. Markets crash. People leave. Plan collapse. Storms come. And when they do, most people resist. They argue with reality. They get angry at what simply is. But here's the Stoic truth. The more you resist reality, the more it breaks you. The more you align with it, the more it refines you. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor, wrote this while watching Rome fall apart. You must live in accordance with nature. And by nature, he didn't just mean trees and rivers. He meant the unpredictable, untamed flow of life. The timing you don't get to choose. The results you don't get to force. The people you don't get to control. So instead of fighting it, you flow with it. Not as a passive bystander, but as an active force who understands the game. You can't control the ocean, but you can become an excellent swimmer. You can't direct the wind, but you can adjust your sails. This is what I call the mindset of expect nothing. Prepare for everything. It's not pessimism. It's precision. It means you don't demand that life give you what you planned, but you do prepare yourself mentally, emotionally, strategically, so when the shift comes, you bend, you adjust, you move with it. Let me give you a real-world example. A man spends years building his investment portfolio. He studies. He plays it smart. He makes bets he believes in. Then, the market crashes. He loses 6 figures in a week. Now, he has 2 choices. Option 1, rage. Blame. Resist. Tell himself it shouldn't have happened. Or, option 2, accept. Adapt. Learn. Recalibrate. Acceptance doesn't mean apathy. It means clarity. He's not giving up. He's giving up fighting reality. And that's what allows him to move forward without bitterness. Because Stoicism isn't about rolling over. It's about responding with wisdom. And that starts with this question: what is mine to influence? And what is life simply doing? With or without my vote, your job is to meet the moment as it is, not as you wished it would be. Because here's the truth. Life doesn't owe you fairness. It doesn't owe you timing. It doesn't owe you the outcome you visualized. But it does offer you something else, something even more powerful: the ability to adjust, to accept what is, to act on what you can, to find peace, not because everything went your way, but because you stopped needing it to. So here's your practice. Each time something doesn't go your way, repeat this phrase internally: flow with nature, not against it. Say it slowly. Let it settle. It's a reminder that you weren't promised easy. You were promised uncertainty. And that's okay, because what you didn't expect may be exactly what sharpens you next. So yes, the relationship might end. The deal might fall apart. The project might fail. But if your mindset is grounded, you stay intact. You don't collapse with the plan. You rise with the adjustment. That's power. That's control. Not over outcomes, but over your presence inside the unknown. That's the Stoic way. So, as we close this series of principles, let this one sit at the foundation. Don't try to dominate life. Learn to dance with it. Not everything can be predicted. Not everything should be, but everything can be faced with a still mind and a prepared spirit. Flow with nature, not against it. So let's take a breath and look at what you've just built. This is not just advice. This is an operating system, a mental framework for modern chaos. Let's recap. Your Stoic OS V1. 0 includes 1. Live with a North Star. Anchor your days with purpose. 2. Emotional control equals true power. Respond. Don't react. 3. Master the mind before it masters you. Train your inner voice daily. 4. Detach from criticism. Not growth. Filter the feedback. Discard the noise. 5. Offense is a decision, not a reaction. High-status calm is your superpower. 6. Reframe fear. Rewrite shame. Face the shadows. Extract the lesson. 7. Premeditate chaos. Visualize obstacles before they hit. 8. Narrow your focus. Invest only in what you can control. 9. Restraint in the heat. Delay your response. Protect your future. 10. Flow with nature. Move with life, not against it. 10 principles. 1 inner architecture. Built not for perfection, but for endurance. Because Stoicism isn't about escaping life's weight. It's about getting stronger beneath it. It's not about avoiding pain. It's about developing a spine that can carry it, hold it, use it. The modern world sells comfort. The Stoic chooses capacity. The modern mind panics when plans collapse. The Stoic adjusts, rebuilds, and keeps walking. So no, this philosophy won't protect you from chaos, but it will make sure chaos doesn't own you. And that's the point. The world can't touch you unless you hand it the key. Let's make this real. For the next 7 days, take on this challenge, the Stoic Reaction Challenge. The rules are simple, but not easy. No complaining, no blaming, no emotional reaction. Whatever happens, you pause, you breathe, you respond with intention. And if you slip, you reflect, not punish. Because the game is progress, not perfection. So here's the question. Which of the 10 Stoic principles will you start with today? Drop it in the comments. Write it like a commitment. And if you're ready to keep building this operating system, subscribe for the next video in the Stoic Power series, The Art of Strategic Detachment, How Stoics Walk Away Without Losing Power. Until then, stay calm, stay sharp, stay untouchable.